Hello and welcome to this webinar of Business Rule Management System. My name is Prabhu Jha and I'm Vice President of Progress Competency. With me, my colleague is Archana Gupta. She is the Technical Architect. We are going to talk about the Business Rule Management System in this webinar today. But before we begin, let me give some of the bookkeeping rules during the webinar. If you have any questions, if you have any query, you can type in the chat box either during the webinar or after the webinar, and we'll be happy to take. We'll not able to take any question during the webinar. We'll not able to take any answer. And if due to the time constraint, we'll not able to take your question during the webinar by the end of the webinar, please feel free to send us through the email and we'll be happy to answer that. So let's begin. So before we begin, let me just set the context that why we are here and what we're going to talk about. So Business Rule Management System is something which is not new to the IT world, and there are many business rule management systems out there. Not all industry or application uses it, but there are specific industry, there are specific applications, they are highly dependent on the business rule management system. So we thought, why not bring our experience with the customers we have worked so far and share with the community. So agenda of the today's webinar. We'll talk about the business rule management system. Where we're going to talk about the detail on the business rule management system, what are its components, its benefits, where it fits. Then we'll talk about what are the popular BRMS which is out there. And after that, we are going to talk about the Corticon BRMS, which is from the House of Progress. And then we are going to do a demonstration of the Corticon BRMS, that how you can develop the business rule, how you can deploy it, how you can model it. So that's the overall agenda, and we hope that from this webinar you are able to understand the basics of the BRMS and basics of the Corticon, and it will help you in take the decision if you wanted to use the BRMS in your system. I'm inviting my colleague Archana to discuss detail on this further.
Thank you, Prabhu. So what's a business rule? Every enterprise takes thousands of recurring decisions every day. For example, should we pay a claim? What should be the order priority? What route a ship or truck should take? These all are business decisions. And there are collections of business rules that helps us in taking those decisions. For example, considering a claim industry, in a claim industry, possible business rules could be, is the claim valid? Is the policy expired? What's the coverage? What's the liability amount? Is it having a correct billing code? And is a supervisor attached to a policy or not? And so on. So these all are business rules that derive the business decisions. In an IT system, these business rules becomes the basic ingredients of the mission critical application. Sometimes these rules are such a large number and so complex that they once coded, they become several thousands of lines of code. So sometimes changing a policy might not be that difficult. Maybe it just change in a sign, just change the sign that from less than, change it to less than or equal to. But sometimes the policy is embedded so deep down in the code that it's very difficult to make a change. So these are the scenarios where BRMS comes in picture. So let's see how it works. As I already told you that in an organization, the decisions are governed by business. For example, one of the decisions that a claim industry have to make is, should we pay a claim? And one of the decisions, there could be thousands of rules for this decision, but one of the rules could be reject the claim if it has invalid billing code. So what's a business rule management system? Business rule management system is a software technology that externalize the business logic from the mission critical application. So we would still have our mission critical application or the transaction processing system, but just the business rule intensive part will come in BRMS. And in a process flow, whenever the application has to make the decision, it sends the request to BRMS. It processes all the business rules and return response back to mission critical application where they can make the decisions. So it's an intuitive tool that gives power of managing and changing the rules to business people with little and no dependency on IT. BRMS comes in handy where the situation is we need to program not hundreds but thousands of business rules. In fact, more complex the problem is, more effective BRMS becomes. So why rule management? As I already told, what the business rule is and what's its role in a business. So let me directly come to the situation why we need an external software to manage our rule. With good enough programming skills, we can code or implement any kind of business problem using any programming language. But the thing is, things change, and things change in unpredictable way. So does your system allow you to implement that change? Changes comes in varieties of ways. For example, changes in regulations, market changes. Simple problems that can be described within 10 minutes may take months to implement and code. So this is the situation where BRMS comes. And in BRMS, since the business rules are decoupled from the business application, so it makes changing or managing the rules cost-effective. BRMS can reduce, if I talk about facts, BRMS reduce the change cycle by 75% and maintenance cycle by 25%. So BRMS provides agility in the business with speed, accuracy, and control. So now have a look at the traditional versus modern approach. So first of all, traditional approach. In traditional approach, there is just one mission critical application. All the business rules, or all the everything that drives the business are within that mission critical application. And most of the companies as of now are using this approach in their IT systems. And what's the modern approach? In modern approach, we have two additional components. And if we want to exploit the new technologies available in market these days, so we can have these two new components. First is business rule management, and the second is business process management. Business rule management is a component where all the business rules are kept, and mission critical application can call those business rules to make the decision. And the second is business process management, BPM, where all the workflow is kept. So in today's discussion, we'll be mainly focused on business rule management system. So now I will invite Prabhu to talk on the situations where BRMS fits.
Yeah, so when we talk about the BRMS, it's not something which you hear a lot, and it doesn't fit in all kind of systems and applications. So the first question which comes that is it really needed for your system or your application? And I guess a general rule of thumb is that if your system has a rule hotspot, means that the areas in your system which are where you write probably thousands of rules or several hundred of rules if it is not thousands, and it's growing in an exponential rate, and you really don't know where it's going to stop. Based on your business, you have to keep adding the rules, and you cannot remove the rules. And then after some period of time, it becomes so huge that your change cycle started taking a lot of time, your testing cycle, your regression cycle started taking a lot of time. That certainly qualify for business rule management system. There are few cases which have listed here, but then again these are a very small list. If we start going through the industry and industry-wise, sub-industry and domain-wise, it can be a super long exhaustive list, which probably not possible to discuss here. But that's the general rule of thumb we give you, that if you can figure out that if you have a rule hotspot, and if you need to understand that how many rules you have to do it, and it is growing in exponential rate. Again, some of the samples where industry use the BRMS extensively in certain situations, and those are kind of listed here. For example, insurance, healthcare, financial service, government, telecoms, retail. And again, these are just a very high-level idea that you can kind of figure out that, okay, if I have to draw a decision from several thousands of rules, I really may need to look into a BRMS system for my application. So again, then we'll continue to discuss the detail. Archana.
Thank you, Prabhu. So now let's see what's the traditional versus BRMS change cycle approach is. If we talk about traditional approach, in traditional approach, business specifies the problem. Then it comes to IT, where they design the system around to fix the problem and code it, and something is put into template for reuse purpose, and then followed by quality assurance. And BRMS approach, these initial steps of software development life cycle are compressed into just one step, which is called modeling. And since this leads to a significant acceleration in software development, and not only significant acceleration, the code generated is also a high quality code. So next is BRMS components. The very basic components of BRMS are repository, tools, and runtime environment. Repository is the component external to our business application, where we keep all our rules, where all rules are stored. Tools, it's a interface that allows business people or the IT people, users view the business rules and manage the business rules. And the third is runtime environment. The execution environment, runtime environment is the execution environment which allows business applications to invoke the decision logic within the BRMS. The business logic gets executed within the BRMS, and the results are returned back to the application. So far we have discussed what a BRMS can do. Now let's see what it cannot do. So first of all, BRMS can. First is reduce reliance on IT. BRMS gives an interface to business people where they themselves can model the rules. This reduces reliance on IT. Second is reduce time to market. In traditional approach, if we have to implement any change, the business specifies the problem, and that problem is sent to the IT. They would first analyze the problem, then estimate it, then develop it, followed by testing. In a BRMS approach, the business people themselves make the change. So time to market is greatly reduced. Imagine a policy has to be launched overnight. So if the business people themselves have the control, they can do it overnight. Next is increased precision in expressing a decision logic. BRMS system provides built-in features which help in modeling the rules with high precision. I will going to talk about these features in detail when I'll be demonstrating one of the BRMS. Next is increased decision automation. The result returns is not only high precision, but also could detail which all rules are executed to derive that result. So if that if that it can return, imagine how it would help business people in identifying what rules are executed that return that result. So it's very helpful for business. Now let's see what BRMS cannot do. It's not a ERP. It cannot replace the mission critical application or the business application because it's not an insurance, healthcare or banking application. Just the rule intensive part that gets replaced by BRMS. It's not a transaction processing system. So now let's talk about the popular BRMSs available in market. Popular BRMSs available in market could be grouped into two categories. First of all is proprietary products, and second is open source products. In proprietary products, the most famous one is IBM's BRMS, which is Operations Decisions Manager, ODM. It's previously known as ILOG. This BRMS has very rich features, but it also have a very high price tag. This is mostly used by analytics and complex event processing. The next is FICO's BRMS, which is Blaze Advisor. It also have a rich set of features, but with some decent pricing. This BRMS is mostly used by financial firms. So the third one is BRMS is Progress BRMS, which is Corticon. It has some well-built-in components with lower pricing than ODM and Blaze. And the last is Smart Decision Manager and Pencil Decision Modeler. It's recently been introduced in market. Now let's have a look at the open source tools. The open source rule engines tend to be more developer focused. Once the framework and the architecture is built, they tend to serve the purpose, but they do not have advanced feature like the proprietary products provide. So one of the open source product is Red Hat's rules. Second is open rules, which allow users to implement the business rules using Google Doc or Excel sheets. It's mostly suitable for small business applications. And the next is Jest 7. It's also an open source rule engine which is suitable for small scale applications. Progress Corticon BRMS. Now let's talk about one of the vendor-specific BRMS, which is Corticon. It's provided by Progress Software Corporation. Corticon BRMS allows IT or business people model the rules using a patented Excel sheet-like structure. This Excel sheet-like structure is very handy and easy to use. And it allows decision modelers to model the rules. By modeling, I mean they do not have to code the rules. It's just a drag-drop ease. In fact, Corticon is so easy that the business analysts, after a quick 2 or 3 day training, can come to a point where they can start using the software. Once the rules are implemented, they could be compiled into high-performance executable code. This high-performance executable code can be published as SOAP or REST service, and that can be accessed by any business application. This is just to give you a glimpse on how Corticon looks like. This is a Corticon Studio. Corticon Studio is a one-page or one-screen interface, not very clumsy. It's basically divided into 4 parts. First of all, the top left part, It's the part where vocabulary is defined or the business objects or schema is defined on which we implement the rules. The lower left part is the list where the comprehensive library of operators is provided. We use these operators in implementing the rules. Now the top right part is the area where we actually implement the rules, the conditions part and the actions part. And the lower right area is the area where we can enter the rule statements, or this area can also be used for traceability. So it's a Excel sheet-like interface. Now, key features of Corticon. So first of all is fact modeler. Fact modeler is a part where we model create the vocabulary. Vocabulary is the entities or attributes using which we are going to implement the rules. It could be a schema. It can be a schema or business object. Next is rule modeler. Rule modeler is the part where we actually implement the conditions and actions. Next is integrity checker. These are the list of some few features that are inbuilt within Corticon that helps us in modeling the rules with integrity. I'm going to talk more about these features in the demonstration part. Dependency viewer. It's a kind of flow chart where it gives you a view of what all rules are executed to derive a particular result. Next is test case modeler. It's an interface within Corticon Studio that allows us to quickly test the rules. So as soon as we have implemented the rule, we could test them using the test case modeler. And the next is deployment console. It's a component which is used to create the deployment artifacts. So it's very easy to use and it's really helpful for IT people. Now benefits of BRMS.
Yeah, so we kind of quickly had a look at what the BRMS is, and we also went through the Corticon BRMS, one of the BRMS tools. So like we have kind of talked from the, Archana has kind of talked from the beginning, BRMS has certain very important benefits which certainly stand out. For example, for the business people, it's kind of a very handy tool where they themselves can do the rule modeling. I mean, they don't have to create a lengthy requirement specification and design specification sort of thing, and then technical people will do the development, and then it will go through a long cycle of implementation and deployment. So it gives that agility. Business people can go to the rule model, can do the fact check, and can do the check that whether it's any rule is redundant, whether it's any rule is incomplete, and all those things. So it gives that edge compared to if you just try to program a rule through a typical parameterized application. We are not saying that it's not possible to do that in a typical programming, but it just gives a certain edge compared to a typical programming. So typically its benefit is divided into two parts: business benefits, which is very obvious, reduced time to market, integrity and agility and all those things. But IT benefit is extremely important. It's it reduces cycle time, change is quick, defects and bugs are less, and usually it's caught in the beginning of the cycle when you're doing the rule model. So overall it improves the productivity significantly when it comes to the changes in your system. That's where it really stands out. So now we are going to, Archana is going to demonstrate actually a rule model. We're going to model a rule into the Corticon and demonstrate how it is going to be modeled into the tool. Over to Archana.
Let's now see how we can use Corticon to model the rules. Before we proceed, let me give you a context of what we are going to talk about in the demonstration. A key component for successful claim management is to identify the high-profile claims and settle them as earliest as possible. So this is because earlier the claim settlement is, lower will be the cost incurred. So take an example of worker compensation claims. A claimant is filing a claim against the insurance policy. So there are a lot of factors that could determine what's the risk of a claim, what's the profile of a claim. And if we think about like just a very simple rules, for example, I have took just these two simple rules, and in a real life scenario there could be hundreds of rules that determine the profile of a claim. So these two examples are, if a claimant is affected by hearing loss, then it's a high risk claim, so high profile claim. And if a claimant is working in a oil and gas refinery industry, then it's a medium risk claim. So these two are the business rules, and now we would see how we can implement this in Corticon. So once again, in summary, the business rules are: claimant is affected by hearing loss, then it's a high risk, and claimant works in oil and gas refinery, it's a medium risk. So for that, I will pull the Corticon Studio. So here is the Corticon Studio. It's an Excel sheet-like interface. Here for the ease, I have already written these two rules here, documented these two rules. So let's start modeling them. It provides a drag and drop ease. So first rule is if the affected body part. Here I have created the vocabulary. Claimant detail is the entity and it has several attributes. So for ease, I have just taken 4 attributes using which I'm going to implement these two rules. So first of all is if claimant is affected body part is hearing loss. So if that's true, the risk rating of that claim is high, right? If it's affected by hearing loss, true, then risk rating is high. Now second rule, if a claimant works in oil and gas refinery, what area? I'm sorry. First area, oil and gas. All right. Gas refinery. If that's true, then risk is medium. All right. So I can connect these statements with the actual rule. So if I click this statement, I know that this is the rule, this is the row, or this is the rule number where this statement has been implemented. And if I click this one, and even the other way around, so I know where this rule is being implemented. And in case a rule is implemented in multiple rows, then all those rows get highlighted.
So like Archana has mentioned that, it has a traceability. So this is how the, bottom part where it's a natural language, you write the rule and you can trace it back with the actual rules by just clicking on it. When it is thousands of rules, it becomes really, really handy.
Yeah, so now we have implemented these two rules. Now let's quickly test them. So in order to test them, I have these two test cases ready. One claimant is Tom, and he has hearing loss. And second claimant is Harry, and he works in oil and gas refinery. So if I compile the rule sheet and then run it to test the test cases, so it says Tom is a high profile, and let me see what's the it's oil and gas refinery. Yeah. so it might be some spelling mistake somewhere. So if it's the oil and gas refinery, it's medium. So these two rules are executed, and the highlighted ones give me the result. So this is how we model the rules. Now let's have a look at some built-in features that Corticon provides. So first of all is check for conflicts. So if I click this, Corticon says me we have one conflict detected. I say okay, and expand the columns. I just double click the column header to see what two rules are conflicting. When we specified the business problem, we didn't specify that if the claimant has both the hearing loss and also works in oil and gas refinery, then what should happen? But Corticon detected that conflict, that we didn't define it. So in this scenario, what one could do, one could go to business and ask, well, you didn't specify us this scenario, then what should happen in this scenario? Business analyst might say that, well, if a claimant has lost his hearing capability, then it's a high profile claim, regardless of the domain in which it works. But the business didn't specify that specification. It was not there in the specification. BRMS helped in identifying that gap in the specification. Now we can fix this gap in specification. As business has said that if claimant has lost the hearing capability, then it's a high risk claim regardless of any other thing. So what we say is if rule 1 is executed, override the rule 2. It should never be executed. So if I check for conflicts again, now there is no conflict. Second feature is check for completeness. If I click it, it says that it has added one missing scenario, and it has been added into one column. So one of the column, third column, Corticon added, and it's the scenario where claimant is neither has lost the hearing capabilities nor works on oil and gas refinery. So that scenario, we could go back to business in this scenario as well and ask, you didn't specify us that scenario as well, so what should happen in that? So in this scenario, business can say that, well, everybody knows that if these two are false, then it's a low risk claim. But since they didn't specify it, how come a system would know that what has to be done? So everything has to be implemented in the system for the system to work correctly. So for this again, I code it as low. So that's how Corticon helps implementing, modeling the rules with integrity. Another one of the very handy built-in feature is compress rules. We have seen a scenario. It's a real example. It's a real case where we got a rules from one of the client, and they were like 200 set of rules. And once we implemented all those rules in Corticon, when we use the compress rule feature, those rules got compressed into just 50 claims. It's just 50 rules. So imagine managing 200 rules versus 50 rules. So that's also a good feature that can be sometimes very handy. So with this, I would like to conclude my presentation and demonstration on Corticon.
Yeah, thank you, Archana. Maybe you would like to take this studio down and we can switch to the presentation. Okay, so I guess with this we would like to conclude our webinar, and we hope that it was helpful in understanding what the BRMS is, and where if you need to analyze for your system where it needed BRMS or not, you have some ideas that how you want to do that and what kind of tools are out there. In the interest of time, we cannot talk about all the tools, so we have talked primarily around Corticon BRMS progress. and hopefully it give you some initial idea that how Corticon works. And would like to take any questions you have on this from this point on, and we have close to 5 to 7 minutes time. We can take the question during that period. So there is one question. Can I generate the reports from the rules which we have create in the Corticon or any other BRMS? What kind of reporting features are out there? Ashna would like to answer that.
Yeah, there is a feature within Corticon Studio that would let us generate the reports. So if we, it's right away in the menu bar. It's not that tricky. If we go to rule sheets, and then right away there is a reports option. So that's how we can create the reports of whatever rules we have generated.
Yeah, and I would not like to comment on other BRMS, but pretty much rule reporting is a very basic feature. So you can count on that all the BRMS will have it. However, we cannot comment on the open source BRMS. Those are relatively smaller in size and features. Yeah. So another question is, what if we wanted to use some programming logic in the Corticon?
Yes, there is a way we can do that as well. In fact, there are several ways we can do. First of all is operators extension. If you remember, we have I've shown you the area where the inbuilt operators are provided. So we can override those operators. I mean, we can extend that library of the operators. We can have our own, say, Celsius to Fahrenheit conversion operator. And we can also have standalone operators, not the standalone extension operators, which are specific to any vocabulary. And we can also have service callout extensions, which entirely gives you control on how you want to manipulate the vocabulary, how you want to manipulate the data. And all these extensions and override and service callouts can be done using a Java class file. That Java class file, once compiled, becomes a jar file, and you can convert into a pluggable which can be plugged within Corticon. So this is a feature very well used with many of the clients I have worked on.
Yeah, I would like to again say that the service callout is a very powerful feature. It's like almost writing your own program and calling it within the Corticon. So it gives you a lot of flexibility to customize and do something which is, you feel it's very complicated to do in the BRMS. So there is another question. What are the other languages which is supported by Corticon?
What I have read in progress documentation is .NET is another language that supports. However, I haven't practiced, like I haven't any hands-on, but that's something we can do.
Yeah, so just to let you know that Corticon is primarily written in the Java, so it has a natural inheritance with the Java language. Anything you write in Java, it just gel well. But yes, progress claims that .NET classes or callouts can work as good as Java classes. But something to try for. So there is another question that the business analyst or the business people who are doing the rule modeling, can they themselves do the deployment also? I mean, it's like probably end-to-end thing about the primary question is. Archana, you may.
If you remember, I showed a component called deployment console that's used to create the deployment artifacts. If a proper training is given to a business analyst, they can use that tool to create the deployment artifacts. It's not a no coding or no command are required to run that deployment console, but yeah, some training would be needed to use it. But for IT folks, I think it would be quite easy to use.
Another question is how many rules, I guess, I mean, the question is value, but I think the question probably they wanted to ask is how many rules they can implement in one particular rule sheet. So is there any limitation? Or
no, there is no limit on number of rules that can be implemented within a rule sheet. It's up to you how you want to modularize your rule implementation. You can have 100 rules within one rule sheet or 1,000 rules within one rule sheet and have 10 rule sheets with 100 rules. There is no restriction from the tool regarding rule implementation.
But won't will have any kind of impact on performance?
No performance impact.
Okay. I guess there is no more question at this point, so would like to conclude the webinar, and thank you all for attending it. We hope that you have learned something out of it, and so we also learned something from you. Thank you very much, and have a nice day. Bye-bye.